is volcanic controls on solute transport and methane bulb growth characteristics within muddy aquatic sediment. My supervisor is Dr. Regina Kassman. Okay, gas sediments are naturally found in the continental margin in worldwide. And here, for instance, in the seismic profile interpreted by Casas, etc., you can see the gas sediment with visible black cloud, and the gas sediment consists with bubbles, which are discrete bodies of immiscible gas which resides in aquatic sediments. I will concentrate on only gassy muddy aquatic sediments and the bubbles within muddy aquatic sediments. And the gassy muddy sediments typically are uncommented, cohesive, and fine-grained. It is a source of permanent concern of the contribution of destabilization of marine aquatic and coastal infrastructure, and also air pollution and global warming. Bubble in different sediments are different. According to Anderson, three general structure of bulb in aquatic sediments exists. The categorization is dependent on grain size. The first one, type A, you can see here, the yellow is sediment green, blue are the water, and black are the small bubbles. These small gas bubbles share common pore space containing water between the grains. And type 2, when bubble fills the void space between the number of grains, only displays the pore water, but the bubble do not displace the grains. And these bubbles reside in coarse grain sediments such as sand. And bubble of type 3 are the big bubbles that are actually displace not only pore water but grains from the initial position in the porous media. This type of bubble is dominant in very fine cohesive sediments, which are muds. This is the thing that I focused on. For the bubble shape in the sediments, here is the core. You can see the intercorrelated layer of sand and mass. And here you can see the two kinds of bubbles. This is a small spheric bulb in the sand, and this is the larger bubble which grows in mud. These bubbles are the bubble in the mud. The shapes are elliptical or disc-shaped. They have another shape than these spheric bubbles which grows in sand. And these bubbles in mud can be approximately by the oblate spheres. And the experiment on the bubble injection here in gelatin is a muddy sediment surrogate showing larger elliptic bubbles. So how this bubble grows? For instance, this is the experiment from the bubble growth within the sediment. This is the core specimen of the fine-grained muddy sediment, and the methane was injected from here into this sediment. And what was seen is that the blue in the muddy sediment, the bubble initially fills the digested pore space and then starts to deforming the surrounding sediment skeleton. Bulb injected to the core of mud. I played the movie. The yellow one is the core. This is the bulb injected. We can see from the movie 7 centimeter in length and 6 centimeter in the particular direction approximately. The large bulb is generated in mud, and we can see maybe cornflake shaped or disc shaped large bulb, which is much larger than the grain size of this sediment. In addition, there are 2 processes managing bubble growth in muddy sediments. One is methane solute supply to growth bubble that provides the sufficient source with the bulb expansion. The other is linear elastic fracture mechanics that manage the mechanic response of abundant muddy sediments. The mechanical response of the sediments can be, there are 2 main characters can characterize. One is the fracture toughness. Fracture toughness is quantitative way of expressing a material resistance to a fracture associated with breaking the cohesion between the grains, which is applicable for the muddy sediment in my case. When there is a muddy sediment with small size, you can look here, this picture. The gas will invade by fracturing opening, and then in this way, all the surrounding grains will be pushed apart, and the cohesion between grains will be broken. For instance, the cohesive sediment bonds are separated. You can see from the picture between the grains due to the broken. This is the reason why you see like this. The other main parameter of the fracture mechanics is Young's modulus. Young's modulus is mechanical property that measures the tensile or compressive stiffness of a solid material. The Young's modulus also is related to the sediment's cohesion. For instance, I attached the you can see from the picture. If you have some pieces of material with length L, then if the material is stiffer, then you need a bigger stress to extend it with a distance delta L. And if the material is softer, you need a smaller stress to extend to this same distance. With respect to the bubble growth mechanism, some groups like Johnson from 2002, they are in the simulated experiment and try to track bubble evolution within the bulb. Here is the pressure. The graph is the pressure in bulb growing in the sediment taken from the core bay, and this is the value growing in the gallatin, a muddy sediment surrogate. And where it's seen that the internal pressure shows a sawtooth pattern. This pattern is expected if the tested sediment responses to an increment of pressure in an elastic manner, but eventually fails by fracturing. Here is the fracturing. Yeah, at this stage, for instance, when the methane, the gas is injected into the bulb, the elastic expansion at this stage exclude after some threshold. and then fracturing of the bulb at its end of expansion, and the pressure drops down at fracturing stage. And this is the fracturing engine. The sawtooth pattern cannot associate it with a plastic or fluid response. That means all those mass or gelatin, they are very soft and maybe fluid-like, but this response, sawtooth pattern on pressure evolution, is characteristic only for the solid and not for the fluid. And that means that actually these sediments and those surrogate like gelatin are not like fluid, but fracturing elastic solid. Expect the linear elastic fracture mechanics. The solute transport also participates in the bubble growth. You can see from the picture here. The bulb is at the bottom left corner with black. There are several arrows towards into the bulb, which means bulb uptake the solute during the growth, especially elastic expansion. So, solute transport and elastic fracturing are the two main coupled processes that drive the bubble growth. There are two main knowledge gaps that I found. One is the effects of the sediment mechanical properties controlling the bubble growth for solute transport are less important. For example, from the paper Agar and Bourdieu, which requires further investigation. The other is the effects of the coupling have not been investigated and need to be explored in depth. So, the three aspects of research objectives for my master study is: one is to understand solute exchange process of the growing pre-mature bulb with ambient muddy sediment on the different sediment mechanic properties, and to identify specific roles in the bubble growth dynamics. The second one is to study various bubble growth characteristics like inner bubble pressure, solute flux, bubble growth rate, bubble shape and size as a function of sediment mechanical properties. Finally, is to get insights into various aspects and implications of the investigated coupling between the bubble solute transport and the muddy sediment mechanic response. Okay, I will describe the model in brief. So this is the initial seed of the bulb. The sediment box is porous. This is the bubble head and this is the bubble tail. And what I simulate is a bulb modeled as a small penny-shaped crack with one surface placed on the XZ symmetry plane. The advantage of this model is in two-way coupling of the continuous solute transport component, which with a linear elastic fracture mechanics component. The simulated bulb grows from the initial penny-shaped to the final elliptical. We can see from the front view and cross section from the final elliptic mature with the closed tail here. The model is from the bubbling initiation to the mature configuration. At that time, bubble starts ascent. Due to the limited time, I will only describe the main equations solved in the model. What I'm simulating, the first solved equation is the solute concentration equation, conservation equation in porous sediment box. It is formulated for the dissolved methane in the pore space in the sediment box, and this is what happened around the bulb in the pore space of the sediment. Next part here is conservation of gases methane inside the bulb, and this is the rate of change of gases methane within the bulb. How this massive of gas change with time, and this is the change depends on the diffusive flux through this bubble surface. The third one is concentration here of dissolved methane at the bubble surface, also called Henry's law, which bears the relation between the concentration of gases methane inside the bulb and the dissolved methane on the bubble surface here. Finally, what I measured here is the fracture component, the final one. It is a stress intensity factor at the bubble front that indicate as the state of the front at each point. The fracture toughness and the Young's modulus setting in the model are I attached a picture in the left, and the proportionality could be derived from linear elastic fracture mechanics, suggesting the ratio K1C of E over E, 10 power of minus 4 order of magnitude is indicative for the basic value here of fracture toughness and Young's modulus. The absolute of K1C and E are assigned in this study to vary slightly to investigate the effect of each parameter. What I try to do, I try to simulate the evolution of maximal stress intensity factor K1 max over the bubble front. The left chart is for the variability in K1C, and the right chart is for the variability in E. And you can see here, these two sawtooth pattern can be seen in the sediment with different K1C and E in both cases. And then you can see elastic expansion here and here with increased K1 max, and then at some critical conditions, it fails by fracturing here and here. And then again, it expands elastically with increased K1 max, and again it fails. What else in the right picture? The difference is in the inflation stage here, but actually the inflation stage is very similar. We can see from the right picture. Look from the left picture. This is the distance L from the bubble center to the top of sediment box. And this is the vertical size here, A. The panel A is variability in K1C, and the right picture is for E. When bubble grows by fracturing, its center moves upwards. So the distance L decreases while the vertical size increases. And the distance in the invariant with bubble semi-height A under the different Young's modulus, but depends on the fracture toughness. We can see from the picture. Here is the result of internal bubble pressure change. The left picture is variability in K1C, okay, and the right one is for E. In both cases, generally, the pressure decreases with time. In all cases, the pressure decreases faster here and here. In the sediments with smaller K1C and with larger E, pressure in stiffer sediment with a larger E decreases faster here than the soft one here. With a smaller E, due to the smaller increment of the pressure drops, we can see from the two insets, and thus shorter subsequent elastic expansion stages. This is the dependence of inner bubble pressure on the vertical distance L here, from the bubble center to the sediment box top at bubble growth. The left picture, the panel A, for K1C, and the right picture is for E. The bubble pressure decreases as bubble grows upwards, which depends on K1C. We can see from panel A, and doesn't depend on E from the right picture. In addition, for the numeric solution, in addition to the numeric solutions, the analytic solution here was developed. And the numeric solution shows a good agreement, we can see from panel A, with the analytic solution. And this is the evolution of bubble size and opening under different fracture toughness. At some immediate moment, premature bulbs in sediment with higher fracture toughness are smaller. Yeah, we can see here, higher toughness. However, the corresponding mature bulb vertical size here are bigger in panel B. The second one is opening of the bulb demonstrates a bigger maximum opening for bulb in sediments with higher K1C in both cases, here and here. The premature bulb opening vary from near ellipsoidal ones in sediments with higher K1C to nearly inverted teardrops in sediments with lower K1C. And the final one is the mature bulb opening for all simulated K1C cases resemble inverted teardrops. For Young's modulus, at some intermediate moment, the bulb in stiffer sediments here are larger. We can see from the vertical size due to the faster growth rate. The bubble in the stiffer sediments have a smaller opening at some intermediate moment due to the small pressure at that moment. We can see from here, small opening. The terminal vertical size of mature bulb with different E are the same here, as expected. Those bulb reveal in vertical teardrops, teardrop shapes with big opening in the sediments with lower E, here in blue. So for total diffusive flux, the left picture is variability for in K1C, and the right one is for E. Total diffusive flux of bulb in sediments with lower K1C and here and higher E grows faster with short growth time caused by smaller pressure. And besides, the total flux attains larger here values for mature bulbs reaching a higher terminal size in sediments with higher K1C and almost the same terminal flux here on the different E because of the same bubble vertical sizes. The evolution of total bubble growth time till their mature configuration demonstrates that bubble growth time increases with K1C, we can see in this line, and decrease with E, the yellow line. It means bubble take more time to get matured in sediments with higher K1C and E, and lower E. There are three aspects of discussion. The first one is the prediction of bubble size and opening as a function of K1C and E. The bubble height here, and the bubble semi-opening here, and the semi-height is proportional to K1C power of 2 over 3, and the semi-opening is proportional to K1C power of 1 over 3 times omega, where the omega is the ratio of K1C and E. Thus, the inverse aspect ratio is proportional to K1C power of -1 over 3 times omega. Those formula are from the developed analytic solutions. Okay, the omega is constant with depth, which means higher K1C and higher E in the deeper sediments. So the analytical and the numerical analysis will explain a growth of flat, long, elliptic bubbles in deep sediments and small, more spherical ones in the shallow sediments. In addition, the long, flat bubbles in the deep sediments have a big sensitivity to solute supply, and their slow growth rates are mainly connected to the higher inner bubble pressure and thus higher concentration at their surfaces due to the big K1C, fracture toughness. The second one is no growth condition. So what is no growth condition? No growth condition is insufficient solute supply that sometimes manifested in a potential hot of bubble growth may depend on the ambient solute concentration and also on the bubble internal pressure. We can see from the picture the arrow is towards outwards, so there is no solute towards into the bulb. And then the study indicates the fluxes and the bubble's growth rate are almost identical to coupled omega rather than K1C and E as suggested by other studies. The main point the latter applied is that if the omega is not changed with depth, it just requires the same pressure and the supersaturation to avoid the no growth stage. Okay, final discussion. Implications for competitive bubble growth. The depleted concentration here may affect a growth of the digested bubbles. The depleted concentrations area for bubble is larger here. For bubble in the sediments with larger K1C, that affects more competitive bubble growth. Okay, for E, the depleted concentration area for E areas are almost the same. We can see from the picture due to the same terminal bubble vertical size. Okay. Finally, there are 6 conclusions. First is the total bubble growth time and the rate increase with sediment fracture toughness and decrease with Young's modulus, predefined by bigger cumulative methane fluxes with their surface. The opposite trend in the fracture toughness and the Young's modulus effects on the bubble solute fluxes and the growth times, and their proportionality specified by LEFM, linear elastic fracture mechanics, manage the bubble growth rate. Those are invariant with sediment depths if the ratio is preserved. The second one is fracture toughness and Young's modulus are responsible for separate spatial and temporal, but complementary bubble growth characteristics. Then is the inner bubble pressure of the growing bulb at fracturing, concentration at its surface, bubble size, shape, and spatial location are defined by sediment fracture toughness and do not depend on the Young's modulus. Next, alternatively, a temporal evolution of the bulb inner pressure at its expansion between the fracture events depends on the Young's modulus. Smaller increment of bubble inner bulb pressure, pressure drop, and smaller solute adsorption stage are characteristics for sediments with a bigger Young's modulus. And the analytical model indicates a contribution of the fracture toughness to the bulb opening and its surface to volume ratio, additional to that specified by the predefined K1C over E ratio, thus controlling a development of longer, flatter bulbs in the deeper sediments. The last point, it is demonstrated for the first time that the mechanic properties of muddy sediments make a significant contribution to the bubble solute fluxes and the bubble growth. Finally, I would like to thank all people who encouraged, support, and instructed my studies, and give the special thanks to my supervisor, Regina. Thanks for your listening and attention.